Let's understand the final part of the Vegetation and Wildlife, Part 3. This is where the chapter stops being just classification and becomes conservation strategy. So the theme is simple. It's not just what exists in India's forests, but how India tries to protect it. That shift matters. Because in the exam, static geography and governance are often blended into one question. Before we talk about protection, define the asset clearly. India holds about 8% of the global species count. That is why the slide calls it a biological gold mine. Now, biodiversity is not just a collection of animals. It covers flora, fauna, insects, and aquatic life. And the definition you should retain is precise. Biodiversity means the variety of life at all levels: genes, species, and ecosystems. This is where most students stay too superficial. They reduce biodiversity to many plants and animals. That is incomplete. A better answer always includes those three levels: genetic, species, and ecosystem diversity. And the larger point is obvious. India holds this diversity despite occupying a relatively small geographic area. Now, once biodiversity is clear, the examiner starts sorting species by degree of threat. So lock the distinction. Endangered species are under a high risk of extinction in the near future. The examples listed here are black buck, crocodile, Indian wild ass, Indian rhino, lion-tailed macaque, and sangai. Then come vulnerable species. These are not in immediate collapse, but their populations are declining and they are likely to move into the endangered category. The examples here are blue sheep, Asiatic elephant, and Gangetic dolphin. The clean mental rule is the one given on the slide. Endangered means crisis mode. Vulnerable means warning sign. If you blur those two, you lose easy prelims marks. Now take the classification one step further. Not every special species is endangered. Some are special because of numbers, some because of location, and some because they are already gone. Rare means small population and restricted distribution. The examples here are Himalayan brown bear and hornbill. Endemic means restricted to a specific region. The examples given are Andaman teal, Nicobar pigeon, and mithun. Extinct means not found despite searches. The examples listed here are Asiatic cheetah and pink-headed duck. Here is the distinction most aspirants miss. Rare is about low numbers. Endemic is about location. Those are not the same category. Now ask the real question. Why are these species disappearing at all? The answer is historical, not just contemporary. During the colonial era, forests were hit by railways and commercial forestry. After independence, pressure shifted toward mining and infrastructure. And in the modern phase, the big threats are poaching and habitat destruction. There is one more term here that deserves attention: enrichment plantation. That means planting one commercially valuable species again and again in place of a naturally diverse forest. On paper, it may still look green. Ecologically, it is a loss. This is how toppers frame the issue. Threats evolved from exploitation to actual habitat erasure. Now a case study that UPSC can easily use because it connects geography, biodiversity, and medicine. The plant is Himalayan yew, scientifically Taxus wallichii. Its locations given here are Himachal Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh. Its importance lies in one chemical compound, Taxol. And the significance of Taxol is straightforward. It is effective in cancer treatment. That is why this species is not just botanically important, but strategically important. And that is also why it is under pressure. The slide makes the status clear. It is under extreme stress due to overexploitation. So remember the link exactly the way the slide wants you to remember it. Taxus wallichii, Taxol, cancer treatment. Now India's response begins to harden into law. This is the legal shield. First, the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Its core role here is the banning of hunting and the legal protection of habitats. Then, Project Tiger 1973. That is presented here as one of the world's largest conservation campaigns. Then, the Forest Conservation Act 1980. And the three operational outcomes on the slide are clear: ban on hunting, restrictions on trade, and habitat protection. This is how you should see the sequence. The threat was ecological, but the response had to become legal and institutional. That is the governance turn in Indian conservation. Now let's decode the administrative side of forests, because this is a classic confusion zone. Start with reserved forests. They account for more than 50% of forest land here, and their status is the most restricted. The key states attached are J and K, Andhra, Kerala, and Maharashtra. Then come protected forests. These make up about 1/3 of forest land and function as a buffer zone, preventing further depletion. The key states named are Bihar, Haryana, Punjab, and Rajasthan. And this is the confusion point you should never miss. Reserved forests have stricter restrictions than protected forests. Many aspirants reverse that under pressure. Do not. Now add the other two categories to complete the map. First, unclassed forests. These are marked here as community-owned, and the map logic points strongly toward the northeast. Second, permanent forests. These account for about 75% of state forest area in the context given here. And the stat you should retain is simple. Madhya Pradesh has the largest share of permanent forests in India. So the map is doing two things at once. It is separating community-owned forest space from formally retained permanent forest space. And it is quietly telling you that ownership pattern and legal category are not always the same thing. That distinction matters in administrative geography. Now step outside formal law and look at India's older conservation method: sacred groves. This is conservation through culture. Among the Mundas and Santals of Chota Nagpur, the trees linked here are Mahua and Kadamba. Among tribal communities of Odisha and Bihar, the cultural association is with tamarind and mango, especially during weddings. And in Northwest Bengal, the slide uses Lepcha folk songs to show cultural ties to forests. The important takeaway is not just the examples, it is the logic. Sacred groves often preserve rare and endemic species and maintain high biodiversity because taboo and worship act as protection where formal policing may not. That is conservation before conservation policy. Now come the people's movements that changed the tone of policy. First, the Chipko movement in the Himalayas. Its significance here is clear. It successfully resisted commercial logging. Second, Beej Bachao Andolan in Tehri, the Save the Seeds movement. Third, Navdanya, which promoted biodiversity-based farming without synthetic chemicals. The point is larger than the names. These are not just protests. They are models of community participation. That is exactly how you should use them in mains answers. Not as isolated facts, but as examples showing that conservation works better when people are participants, not just subjects of policy. Now we move to the institutional handshake. Joint Forest Management, or JFM. The partnership is between state forest departments and local village institutions, and the exchange is very practical. Villagers provide protection from grazing, theft, and fire. The government provides a share in timber harvest and access to non-timber forest products, or NTFPs, things like leaves, fruits, gums, and other forest produce that are not timber. The result highlighted here is the restoration of degraded forests. This is one of the smartest ideas in the chapter because it links livelihood with conservation. When people benefit from the forest, they are more likely to protect it. That is the real logic of JFM. Now compress the chapter into a last-minute revision frame. Acts: Wildlife Protection Act 1972, Project Tiger 1973. Biostat: India holds 8% of global diversity. Forests: Reserved is the most strict, and Madhya Pradesh is the major permanent forest anchor. Medical link: Himalayan yew for cancer treatment. Extinct or rare recall: Pink-headed duck and Asiatic cheetah sit in the extinction memory line here. Culture cue: Mundas, Mahua, and Chipko, Himalayas. This is the right revision method. Do not revise as one long chapter. Revise in clusters: law, biodiversity, forest administration, cultural conservation, and community action. That is faster, cleaner, and far more exam safe. Now the final framework. Conservation stands on a tripod. First, legal frameworks, protected area management and legal safeguards. Second, community participation, traditional knowledge, sacred groves, and modern policy instruments, working with people rather than above them. Third, ecological restoration, restoring degraded forests and ecosystems for long-term ecological stability. That is the complete picture. Not just protection on paper, not just emotional attachment to wildlife, and not just plantation drives. Real conservation is law, people, and restoration working together. If you can recall this framework without having to think twice, you are exam ready.